welcome Lilita Klavins to come give the Latvian farewell prayer.
A moment's breath, my life to live. Live not the lifetime of the sun. Live not the lifetime of the sun. But standing stone and waters clear, they live the lifetime of the sun. Where went the snow so white? Where went our forms so fair? Sun took the snows so white, earth took the forms so fair. Not all does Lima lead so safely to the shore, for some does God. Some Lima leads, some Shadow Mother calls to shore. I sang, rejoiced, my life's short breath, a breath as brief as summer's song, as waters flow.
Kate Bitney, Andris's wife and magnificent poet, and but she had to go get her glasses. So if you could all think of a terrible pun that Andris would have enjoyed, hold it in your mind for a moment.
Son-in-law drew the Sean looking after him. He got him down in him with the prison's wonderful PowerPoint. Standing with us in front of him, felt the faithfulness. To the prayer card, Lord, for your support and kindness. To my Point Douglas neighbors for bringing food when I could not cook. To all my beloved cousin sisters for your unfailing support and tireless help. To my dear family, whom Andris so deeply loved. Can you hear me okay? And to Andris especially, for the 40 years we had together. And yes, it has been 40 years, and it was a fine partnership. We made home together. We raised a child together. We created prairie fire together. We buried all our parents together. We rode out the storms that life and marriage bring together. We welcomed 3 wonderful granddaughters together. And girls, I don't know if you realize how deeply he loved you and the immense joy you brought to his life. We gardened together. We cooked together. We listened to music and went to the theater and endless lunches and readings together. And we walked through his long illness and finally his passing together. As fine a marriage as anyone could have afford. He was a man so nice I married him twice. And that's true. For all this I give thanks. And I give thanks for the kind of person he was. A man of great character, integrity, backbone. When I needed a good father for my child, he stepped up to the plate and never once wavered. He was kind, courteous, generous, forgiving, as so many people have noted over and over in the messages I've been together. He was steadfast, loyal, stalwart. He was possessed of an uncommon dignity. He was a person of insatiable curiosity and enthusiasm, and had an encyclopedic knowledge of history, in particular local history, and especially he loved comic books, superheroes, and supervillains, and he knew everything about them. He could chapter and verse, he could prove them. And of course, dinosaurs. These last being lifelong fascinations, very best friends. He had a wonderful sense of humor, as pretty much everybody who was here. Dry, pun-ridden, a bit wicked. So I should add this to the list of things we did together. Laugh. Andris never had a really good sense of his own value and how much people respected him. His importance to Canadian literature, how deeply he influenced and touched people. How surprised you would be to see the number of people honoring his memory here and across the nation. I would ask if Ariel, you would read a really lovely excerpt from that letter that Patrick Friesen sent me. He wrote a beautiful letter, and I would like you to hear some of what Pat said. Andris was the great love of my life. I'm deeply grateful for our life together. So I will end as I began, with thanks. Always, beloved, hail and farewell.
First is Katherine Bitney, Andris' daughter.
It was wonderful. I wanted to give you a little idea of that household, the Bitney Taskans household, and it's not something many other people knew about. So it started. There was always writers in my house. W3, Winnipeg Writers Workshop, anyone that old? Does you remember? Well, that happened in my house a lot. Of course, obviously, Prairie Fire started in my house as Writers League. I was told that. I was at the first Writers Guild meeting, which was just crashingly boring. But anyway, so it started, with many people around the house, and one of the people was really fun and cool, and I really liked him. And, he would come by and arrange things and plan things. And then after a while, I noticed that sometimes when there was planning in the kitchen, I would hear these little sounds. There. And apparently, my mom was surprised to discover that I knew about it. As a child, not deaf. But anyway, after a while, that sort of developed, and he moved in, and he lived with us for quite some years. And then one day, I came home from school. There was a giant bouquet of flowers in the living room, and I thought, okay. And my mom came in, and she gave me the serious parent look. She said, I have to talk to you. So I was like, okay. And she said, Mr. Teddy, because that was my nickname for him, she said, I want you to know, Mr. Teddy has proposed to you. You want to know how you feel. And I said, well, if there's a problem, I probably would have mentioned it sometime in the last several years. So that they did get married, and we lived, and he brought me up. And it was very special. It was a lot of fun. For these fabulous Friday nights when he would get paid, back when he worked at the post office, he would get paid, and he would buy comics, and we would all read comics, and we'd buy beautiful food, and we'd eat. We watched cool TV, like Friday night videos and Doctor Who. Great. They were really, really fun Friday nights with my family. One of the things that people note is the sense of humor. And I wanted to give you an idea of just how extremely, how much he would put into a pun. He was deeply devoted to puns in a way that maybe people don't always understand. When I was little, I had a favorite book called Bread and Jam for Francis.
and it was by Russell Hoban, and he had actually a lot of books actually about little Francis the Badger, but this was my favorite, and I loved it. And one time I came home from university, being with my family, and he sat me down, he said, I know it's hard to pay for university, you don't have a lot of money, I wanted you to know that actually, at this time, the maestro of the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra was Graham Otto. He said, he's gotten together with the star of the Beverly Hillbillies, and they're putting together a special tribute to make money and raise money for your schooling. It's called Jen and Bram for Francis. Yeah, no, he would make up a story. Afterwards, he had to think about it. Jen, how do I get Jen? Right? He would work at it. It was worth it, right? So the other thing that happened later in my life was I inherited some lovely, fabulous, and amazing daughters. And my two eldest are stepdaughters. And so I brought them home, and he said to me, when I first brought them home, he said, what tiny little things they were. He said to me, now you know it's not all about blood. Which I already knew because I had him. So, anyway, those are just some things I wanted to share with you.
Also speaking for my wife, Carla Zellner, who has very fond memories of Andris. Been working with him for a couple of years, and also maybe probably more for garden plant hunting, which is only since Andris has been kind of leading with Andris. Also, I'd like to, my brother Mark in Vancouver, unfortunately couldn't make it today. Short of list and so on, but he sends his regrets, and he says, Andris is one of a kind, and I will miss my other big brothers. A great mind is what he said, and I completely agree on this stage. So, I've known Andris, I think, for more than 40 years, obviously before Kate and Andris came to the yeah, he definitely was a big brother to me as well. And I guess one of the first things, I used to go visit Kate and Andris at the house in Parkview. I guess one of the first things that really impressed me was Andris's extensive vinyl LP collection. Somebody quite very eclectic collection. So he had things like King Biscuit Boy and Country Joe and the Fish. And very old Pink Floyd, I think, where they became famous, so a mixture of psychedelia and blues and old rock and roll, which I was very impressed with as a young kid. And then, I guess what really, where we really connected was on plants, and I found that Andris, genuinely, he was a kind and generous person. And he was always willing to give advice, even stage advice, even if we're not talking about gardens. I think I learned that punch from him as well. You probably said it, but you're probably sick of that one. I probably learned it from him. But so as well as being puns, Andris was also very good at cultivating things. He loved to grow plants. He loved gardening. And I guess that's where we really connected. And so I talked about the spring plant shopping in greenhouses, but also we did some extensive gardening tours during one time Kate, myself, and Andris. Did some really, really fantastic gardening tours during Winnipeg for a few summers. And I guess one thing Carla's like every spring like to search out for two particular plants. One was artichokes, and the other was celeriac. Those are the ones she always looked out for those types of seedlings in the spring for Andris. Oh, Andris will like this one. We're going to put these aside for him. And I think it might be the vice versa as well. I think. And so I guess one of the most favorite things I do with Andris, we had another spring ritual, is where I would take him out to Brookside Cemetery, and he would meticulously look after the graves of his old relatives. So his father, Alois, was one of them, and uncles and grandparents, I believe. So every spring we go by these plants, and he would meticulously weed these areas and plant these seedlings and water them. And that's one thing I'm really going to miss. But he really looked after his family. So he didn't just cultivate plants, he also cultivated people. He really looked after his family. Family was everything to Andris, as Francis just mentioned, and Kate as well. So particularly his late father, some of the best memories I have of him looking after family. So Kate and Andris moved next door to look after Alois in his latter years, and Andris really loved his father, but they didn't always see eye to eye. So sometimes there were some very lively discussions in the yard about how to do this, how to do that. I'm just very glad I didn't understand any Latin. But also, he also cultivated a lot of writers' careers through Prairie Park, and where he did that in the writers' field as well. As I mentioned, my wife Carla has fond memories working at Prairie Fire for a couple of years before the two actually became official relatives. What Carla really she appreciated the experience of working in the arts she was a student of science, but she really appreciated working in the arts, and what she really found out is that scientists really have all scientists have an artistic side, or most scientists have an artistic side, and that's what she found out. And also she found that the editing experience with Prairie Fire was really helpful for when she was before she was writing her thesis. That was really good experience for her. And I guess just in finishing, I guess this crowd is a strong indication of Andris' gift in cultivating friendships. So in closing, I just want to thank everyone for attending this event. I'm sure many of you have been touched by Andris' kindness or nurtured by his support. So rest in peace, bro. I'll miss parting with you.
But I was sitting there thinking, and I came up with a pun. and I feel like I should try it out. I mean, I know poets and comedians should never try their material that's brand new, but I thought that the next speaker would help me out with this. I have always really loved the stars, and I've always really loved being out to Andris' garden. And our next speaker, his name is Orion Morris, and so Orion and his belt.
I'm often introduced as Andris' oldest friend. As you may know, Andris was a very fastidious person, especially when it came to words. So to be precise, I was actually his friend for the longest time. He had many good friends older than I. His love of language and its ability to shape concepts into elegant prose or poetry was the bedrock of his literary life from a very early age. For example, Kate walked into the kitchen once and found Andris kissing the maid. She said, "Andris, I'm surprised." And he said, "No, my dear, you are astonished. It is I who am surprised." Actually, they could never afford a maid, and even if they had one, Andris would not have kissed them. You get the idea. We met when we were 11 years old. Though we didn't live far from each other, we went to different schools. He to Sherwood Park Elementary, and I went to Salisbury. So we didn't encounter one another until they built a new school to accommodate the baby boomers, Hampstead Elementary. Fate or chance got us both assigned to Mr. Dalaky's 6th grade class. On one hand, Mr. Dalaky was the worst teacher I ever had. On the other, I discovered a kindred spirit and formed a friendship that would last a lifetime. Andy, as we called him in those days, Andy was the first person I ever met who shared my love of science fiction, fantasy, and of course, comic books. I don't remember how we learned about each other. I do remember the first time I went to his home on Loxley Bay. He led me down to his parents' basement. Concealed behind teetering stacks of stained cardboard boxes enclosing years of plastic-wrapped comic books was a small, open, rectangular space, bounded by the boxes on one side and by cracked cinder block bookshelves crammed with Ace and Valentine paperbacks on the other. This became our universe, though it contained only 2 food and beverage-stained burgundy armchairs with lion's claw feet from the 50s, separated by a 3-legged end table. A 40s-era pole chain swag lamp of indeterminate color, with a tattered golden fringe, hung from a ceiling joist between the chairs, all situated on a threadbare shred of carpet that was once red or purple but had faded to gray. Ensconced in these tattered armchairs, we explored the galaxy, traveled in time and visited parallel universes. We swung through the skyscrapers of New York with Spider-Man and the primordial African jungle with Tarzan. We fantasized about Dejah Thoris and Diane the Beautiful, who both went topless. Before the Manitoba's Writers Guild, before Thin Air, and before the Manitoba Periodical Publishers Association, there was Svakow. Svakow, yes. Well, Svakow we were the science fiction fans and comic collectors of Winnipeg. As we got older, we encountered like-minded people. That is to say, we found other geeks with no social skills but a mad desire to live somewhere, anywhere else. Before Prairie Fire, before Writers News Manitoba, and even before the Miles MacDonnell School newspaper, there was Universe, a science fiction fanzine. And of course, Andris was the editor. He caught that because he's quite young. None of our Svakow cohorts who wrote for the zine, as they were called, were in any danger of being published in a professional science fiction magazine, like Amazing Stories or Astounding. Yet, this novice editor had the gall to reject a story that I wrote because it wasn't good enough. So what if it didn't have analogies, metaphors, or similes, let alone any character development? Who needs emotional content or imagery? It had bloody sword fights against impossible odds, a scantily clad princess, a one-dimensional villain, and an improbable victory at the end. What else did you write? Some editors are so picky. Later, he became the editor of our high school newspaper. This position led Andris and a number of other staffers, including me, to be almost expelled. Another friend and writer, Roman Kozak, submitted a review of Bertrand Russell's book, Why I Am Not a Christian. To our consternation, the principal censored the review. When asked if we could report on the censorship, he said no. We were appalled. We were outraged. We were sneaky. At the time, there was a radical underground newspaper called Omphalos, Winnipeg's version of the Berkeley Bar with the Greenwich Village Voice. Despite his shyness and temperamental disinclination towards confrontation, Andris wrote an article for this paper called The Old Boot in the Face Trick, in which he reported on the censorship he'd experienced. When it was published, we distributed copies to all of our classmates, all outside the school grounds. The school administration went ballistic. The entire staff was called to the principal's office, our parents were called, we were threatened with expulsion, we were told that we had endangered our futures by our radical acts. But to quote Shakespeare, they were full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. We hadn't broken any laws or even any school rules. Plus, many of the staff were the top students in the school. Several were on our Reach for the Top team. Remember Reach for the Top? Plus, any action taken by the administration would be sure to be reported in Omphalos. We proudly called ourselves the Young Radishes. In the end, nothing happened to us. In the year between 11th and 12th grade, Andris and I saved up our entire earnings from working summer jobs and went to the World Science Fiction Convention in St. Louis, Missouri. Labor Day weekend, the biggest event of its kind. It's much bigger now, but it was huge then. Many of our favorite writers were there, like walking by. Oh, there's Harlan Ellison. Oh, look at, you know, it was life-changing. And me in particular, I met people there that were part of my life for most of the rest of my life. I stole this from his overcoat, who carries the packets and everywhere. Later, when he was at the University of Winnipeg, he became editor of the University of Winnipeg Literary Journal. While in college, 4 of us used to gather at our friend Harold's house on Sunday nights. In Winnipeg at that time, there were only 3 TV stations: CBC English, CBC French, and CTV. However, if you had one of those tall rooftop antennas, you could pull in Channel 12 from the U.S. Harold was the only one among us who had one. Every Sunday night at 10:30, Channel 12 played a Mae West, W.C. Fields, or Marx Brothers movie. We were all avid fans, especially of Groucho, Chico, and Harpo. We became the Grout Brothers. Bago, Bago, Jago, and Grout. Andris was Bago. The next year, we rented a house on Kimberly Street in Sculdona. We called it the Grout House. Later, we were joined by Ian. He became Scraggo. I was lucky to have Andris as a roommate. A few years later, he was back at his parents', and I boarded with him for a few months. In 1975, we shared an apartment on Pembina Highway. When I left Winnipeg on winter solstice that year, I never returned as a resident. Still, throughout the years, we stayed in touch. Visits were infrequent but cherished. I named my eldest daughter Aurelia after Andris' mother. I spelled it a little differently. I remember one phone call in the mid-90s. Prairie Fire was up and running while I was publisher of an American neo-pagan quarterly called Green Egg. We were discussing the various problems we were experiencing at our respective magazines when Andris chuckled and said, "We have very different sins, you and I, yet we ended up in the same hell." On my more recent visits, Andris would direct me around the city, explain the history and the people who made Winnipeg what it was. While as a callow youth, I could not wait to get away. Andris, in his gentle and humorous way, allowed me to first appreciate and then to love Winnipeg. I feel blessed to have spent so much time with Andris recently. This year I spent more time with him than I have than the total amount of time I did since I left Winnipeg in 1975. More than his editorial and writing skills, Andris was a true great soul. His gentleness, his humor, and his outrageous puns, and his love of literature have shaped generations of writers. To those of us who were fortunate enough to know him, are well blessed beyond description. There will forever be a hole in my heart where Andris dwelt. I will miss him as long as I live. Thank you.
I'm going to read a lovely remembrance from Ariel Gordon, professor at Mount St. Vincent University in Halifax. Andris Taskans changed my life. A chance meeting over Mandela, a University of Winnipeg literary magazine, led to a lifelong friendship, which included a shared household and numerous relationships and interrelationships highly reminiscent of the Big Chill. The irony would not be lost on him. By bringing me into that fold of creative, unusual, crazy, so intelligent people, he gave me a chance to see myself in that context. And I came to adulthood in community rather than alone. Andris was brilliant in bringing things together, ideas, peoples, opportunities. He placed himself offside of center stage. It was both his flaw and his great, great gift. I will miss him always. And now, bring Carol and Neal Rose.
It surely isn't about blood. We are Andris' Jewish family, and they are our pagan family. We loved Andris. He was my friend, a literary advisor, a punter, everybody will tell you that. He was a great uncle to our daughter, Adira. Taught her lots about gardening and about the world of plants, about being sensitive and gracious, about being hospitable, about being family. Many people have said he changed their lives. The truth is, as a writer, he certainly has mine. He wasn't as blatant as Kate about correcting my work, but he was a wonderful editor. I have to tell this because I have to make Kate laugh. Maybe Michelle's heard it already, but bear with me. My very first reading through Prairie Fire was at McNally's, and I was frightened and, getting up, having coffee, drinking, going to the washroom. And by the time it was time for me to read, Kate had red penciled all of the poems I was supposed to be reading. So it isn't about the blood. It's about the ways you connect. It's about the way you comport yourself in the world. It's about the way you are a friend. It's about the way you care about the well-being of the earth, of people. And I want to sing them home. If you know the song, please help me. Sing them home. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are born and reborn again. Return to who you are, return to what you are, return to where you are born and reborn again. Return again, return again. Return to the land of your soul.
For me, it's always been Andris and Kate. So I realize how difficult this time is for you. Andris was the first person that I ever met besides my grandparents who came from Latvia. I look back now, I don't know if Andris ever went to visit Latvia. The last thing my grandparents wanted to do was to go back to Latvia. But I learned a little bit about Latvia from something about my grandparents from what was an unlikely kind of situation. Never thought much about Latvia until I met you guys. Second thing I want to say, and I say with all due respect, the only warlock that I ever met was Andris. And I remember being at a celebration with all these witches who I dearly love, and the only warlock there was Andris. And I was sitting and I thinking to myself, boy, this guy's got what you call it. We want to do this. But I do want to say, I'm certainly not in a position to judge Andris beyond as a literary entrepreneur, as an artist. But in our tradition, it's told that Father Abraham, the biblical Abraham, had a tent, and that tent was open on 4 sides. And Abraham in our tradition, particularly in the mystical tradition, is called Balat Chesed, the person who has chesed of graciousness, kindness, welcomingness. And the reason, of course, he had the tent open on all 4 sides is so that he could do the mitzvah, hachnas orchim, of welcoming guests. When I think of Andris over the years, the minute you came into the house, there was always a sense of what the Kabbalists call tzimtzum, of withdrawing self and welcoming others. You could feel it. Somebody referred to that as a great, like all of us, our great strength is also possibly our great flaw. But he had the sense of pulling back the ego, not wrenching it back, just gently pulling it back and making room for you, and offering you coffee or whatever it was that he could do. And when we were here last year, we visited, almost like a pilgrimage, and in the course of the discussion, I don't know how we got there, he told us of his medical situation. And so when I came back this year, I kind of figured, well, Andris said he had a couple of years to go, and medicine was wonderful. And then, so while I'm deeply sad to be here, I'm deeply grateful that I am able to be here and to talk about somebody who was really the children of Abraham in spirit and in deed, who made room for people in very modest but very, very profound ways. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here to celebrate his life and to share with you my sense of Andris, whose heart had openings on all 4 sides.
And now Joanne McDowall.
What makes a person unforgettable? Is it their courage, their eloquence, their looks? All of those, perhaps. But for me, the person that I find most unforgettable, most inspiring, was this quiet, gentle person who dedicated his life to helping others to find their voice. I met Andris Taskans in 1969. In 1969, he did not inspire me. Like me, he was a geek. He loved science fiction and comic books. My high school, Garden City, had a weird after-school club, home to all of the school's science fiction nerds. Andris was not a student at high school, but somehow, in the caption to our yearbook photo of the Extrapolative Arts Association, it said, "Missing, Andris Taskans." Even then, his name was not to be forgotten. Unlike most high school clubs, the Extrapolative Arts Association did not end when we went on to university. In fact, it grew to include not only Andris, but all his friends, and then the friends of his friends. John Kozak, Roman Kozak, Howard Curl, Randy Warren. He had a way of growing his base, of going beyond our own group to find others of like mind. Some of those friends became university profs, but not Andris. Despite winning the gold medal for religious studies, he did not pursue academia. His interest was poetry and writing and editing. With Kate, he organized the writers group Winnipeg Writers Workshop, and again he grew his base. He and Kate supplied the house where the writers met. The group included names like Lorna Crozier, Sandra Birdshill. There was so much talent there, and he realized that there was a need for a forum so that our voices could be heard. He started to apply for funding grants, and with Kate, developed a speakers series at a variety of schools and libraries. Every one of the artists were paid for their presentations. That was a key value that he kept to.
Writers should be paid. So many of those early writers built on their experiences and became accomplished and recognized. They became established writers, some Governor General Award winners. They might have done it without Andris and without Winnipeg Writers Workshop, but the path was easier because of Andris and Kate. Over 40 years ago, the group decided we should have a vehicle to publish our work. Under Andris's guidance, we started to publish a tiny little magazine, Writers News Manitoba. Money for it came from donations and from grants. Kate and Andris edited, and after the first few issues, and he was mean to his typist. There was not one mistake allowed. The work was ours, and we did it for free, but every writer was paid and acknowledged. I don't need to tell you that from that simple start, Prairie Fire emerged. As we all know, under Andris's guidance, it continued and continues to publish new and emerging writers as well as established authors. As part of his mission throughout his life, Andris continued to grow and develop community and help others to find their voices. Despite financial insecurities due to government cutbacks, he continued to do his work because it was important work. I never really understood altruism, but I do recognize and appreciate that others like Andris lived in a higher place and dedicated their lives to a greater good. I believe that people like Andris, people who build communities, people who help others to find their voices, people who sacrifice their own well-being for the development of others, I believe that those people should be recognized because they inspire us, because they make our world a better place. He may be gone, but his name will never be missing in the history of CanLit or in our hearts.
I heard about Andris's passing today. I can only imagine how you feel. I'm so very sorry for you. It's a body blow, like someone who is really trying to vanish. Andris was at the center of the writing movement for decades, as well as Andris. He was such a generous, kind, and meaningful man. He always kept an open mind and silence. All kinds of writers and issues found their way into those pages. I always loved encountering him at parties, literary events. He wore a tuxedo better than any man I know. And in the Prairie Fire office, he was ever friendly and humorous and curious about what I might be up to. Those are long ago days now, but they're very fresh in my memory today. And you were there with me. The first I heard of you and Andris was word that some people were met regularly to discuss their writing. That must have been in the mid-70s. I didn't meet either of you until a little later. The poetry scene was so alive then, so much happening. New presses, new magazines, new poets, and you guys were in the middle of all this motion. You contributed so much to writers to the writing world, and that included your generosity. I wish you solace and strength as you go through your last week. I'm sure you have the support of the youth. And this was much love. And I hope to see you again. And now,
Good afternoon, everyone. Last Sunday, when the Winnipeg Free Press headlines read, "Literary Community Mourns Giant," and called Andris a literary legend, probably many of us could not help but wonder what he would have made of these elevated expressions of admiration and regard. There's no doubt that Andris knew and was proud of what he had accomplished for the Manitoba literary community, and indeed for Canadian literature. But he was not a self-interested man.
Indeed, he was generous to a fault. And he would have wanted to pin labels like giant and legend on nearly anyone other than himself. Andris was one of the most courteous people one could ever meet, and his courtesy ran deep. It was not a social act, but a moral position. His kindness and generosity were felt by every person in this room and many outside it, and he was, I suspect, deeply pained by lack of courtesy in others, although he rarely voiced that pain, at least to my knowledge. His painstaking awareness of detail made him both a good editor and sometimes mildly exasperating. I've been on the board of Prairie Fire for about 5 years, and I've rolled my eyes occasionally in meetings with him. Many of you will have heard Andris explain a topic or a problem. You might have expected the explanation to be quite brief if you didn't know him very well. And then came the sentence that you might have grown to both dread and love. He would say, but first, let me go back to the beginning. He was thorough, precise, he cared, and his caring was detailed. In the last few years, he was ill, but determined and uncomplaining. He knew that retirement from Prairie Fire made sense, and he was thinking about it, but he was reluctant to retire. I spoke to him about this as president of the Prairie Fire Board in the last few months. Imagine what it must be like to contemplate leaving something that you were a primary force in creating, and where you had worked faithfully and honorably for over 40 years. Several of us on the Prairie Fire Board were talking with him about these plans when he died too suddenly. He was concerned about the legacy of the magazine that he loved. Not concerned for his legacy, but concerned for the writers still to be discovered and guided in print. We will miss him. The Board of Directors extends its deep sympathy to Kate, Francis, to all the family, and to Andris' close friends, whom he loved so much. There was no one like him. He was one of the kindest people you will ever encounter. Blessings to him.
And now we'll have a musical interlude from Owen.
Thanks so much today for giving me a celebration of life as well. Very, very humble and fantastic. And look forward to watch
come and tell their stories of Andris or read a poem or tell a terrible joke. And I'm aware that as many as there are in here, there's another 100 out in the lobby. So if there's anyone out in the lobby that would like to come in and say a few words, that would be lovely. And we can just form a line over here.
Hi there. My name is Linda Burgess-Ruppel, and I first want to say to Kate and to Francis and to the family, this has been one of the most beautiful celebrations of a person's life, and so fitting for such a beautiful human being. I met Andy, that's when I met him, what he went by, back when I was 15. But he was a very important part of my life as a teenager and in my early years of university at the University of Winnipeg. Neal Rose said that he thinks of Andris as part of a dynamic duo, Kate and Andris, and that's how I've come to know him as well. But when I was a kid, it was Andy and Owen. And those two. And then Orion, I'm not sure if I know him by that name, but people have changed their names a lot. Joanne, of course I know her. She was Wendy and her sister Susan. And then there was Ian Cracknell. This is all the people from West Kelowna Collegiate. Harold Jonason and his sister Louise. And my best friend, we were known as a dynamic duo in those days, was Sylvia. And she's been gone now for 15 years. But coming up here, I know my time is running short. How did Andy influence my life? You've heard so many wonderful, beautiful, true things about him. He was able, even as a young man, a teenager, to say in a very gentle, easy, and non-critical way things to sort of help with your thinking. The Extrapolative Arts Society, as we called it then, was a group of kids, kind of eccentric type kids that didn't fit anywhere else. We needed a place to fit, and so there were thinkers and writers, poets, artists, John Kozak being one of our major ones, photographers, Wayne Bourgeois, musicians, Glenn Carruthers, and myself, the actress. And so, although so many of those people went on to become incredible writers, I became somebody that went on to become a teacher of writing and theater. And so, we all went on to the University of Winnipeg. We had amazing teachers. Professor Reimer had a class called Creative Writing, and we would meet in Brenda Grushow's Dean of Students, Women Students apartment. And we would sit around and look at everybody's writings and talk about them. And of course, Andy shared his there, and I still have my copies of those days, those writings. And so just to let you know that when I first heard this, driving down the street, the radio was on, CBC, and I heard the announcer, Smila Alpha, mention the founder of Prairie Fire magazine, and I didn't have to hear any more. I knew what he was going to say, and I just burst into tears. Because even though we lost touch, our lives as everybody's, we go different ways, we change our names. I've bumped into Kate and Andris on occasions where, we never would expect to bump into. There's those people in our lives. All of a sudden you bump into them at an art installation of some kind or someone. And he was always that important to me that, we always held that special bond of growing up together in a time that was very, very exciting. And kind of the sky was the limit, and he was one who had hung on to those ideas he had. He was one of those major thinkers in our group. He hung on to those ideas, he had that passion, and he lived it. He made it happen. And so I'm so thankful to have been given the opportunity to say these things in tribute to him. Thank you.
Briefly, reviews editor for a prairie fire. It always seemed to me that a good way to think of Andris is he was a vault. He was, that tribe of people that we conquered by everybody. The Germans, the Russians, Vikings, everybody went through there and did their damage. Vaults stayed there and they took care of things. They took care of the people that conquered them. And that's what Andris did. He took care of people. I remember just briefly a little story. There was a special issue of Prairie Fire on back in Freezing, I believe, where I submitted my review to the special editor who objected or questioned a word that I was using. I referred to somebody as isolate, and it's really writerly. He wanted to say isolated because everybody knows what that means. And Andris, without my ever throwing a tantrum or ever saying anything, said, "No, Scott says when he writes something like that, that's what he means." And just a piece of generosity and caring that I really had no right to. But that was Andris.
My name is Jerry. I'm a very good friend. I'm also very emotional. My thoughts about Mr. Kennedy is mostly just telling Francis over and over again that you have the coolest dad ever, because he is responsible for me owning like a ton of Instagram comics. So I was very grateful for that, and I'll treasure that collection even more now. Also, I haven't seen a long time, and I'm sitting having a snack in the other house. I'm getting ready to go to my second job, and I'm running and it was so wonderful because we actually got to talk and touch up on our lives and just reconnect. And when I said I'll see you again soon, and that was the last time I saw him, but I will always treasure that. And thank you that I get to see the wonderful person.
My name's Jenny. My service as the caretaker of the coven. He made sure the sisters were fed, watered, and generally taken care of. And I think that we weren't always aware of just how much he was the ground on which we grew. Anyway, and so Andris the gardener, Kate and I was sitting in her front porch the day after he passed, and I was looking at the garden, and these words came to me. The green ones at 100 a hallet are weeping. Their gentle gardener is sleeping. He will not awake with the spring. Andris was just, he walked by the garden and the plants bowed down. It was like, there he is. Here's the guy. And he was always okay. And you remember him. And you'll miss him. I love him.
A lot of people must be known by books and things like that. My name's Alan. I know my family through my wife, Michelle, and he knew me long before I did. And once I became the official partner, then I got invited to dinner. And like people have been saying, you walk in the door and you're a picture part of it, right? And that's perhaps the most amazing thing. He gave me back my appreciation for comic books, I'll give you that. That's for sure. And the thing that I'll never forget the meal, because nobody used the word gourmand yet. That's what he was. I mean, that was the joy to have you come to his house and sit down to meal, act. And the other thing that we share the most, and I'll miss is the dinosaurs. Because that's just a hobby of mine. I'm not a book guy. I don't, if somebody's not killed in the first chapter, I probably won't forget it. That's one of those things. But the dinosaurs, I'll miss that the most, because we would always be like, going in these. Yeah, and we would hear these pieces there, Scotty, and that was when Scotty came on, which is the biggest T-Rex ever. But the part is, the most part is just, and a lot of people have said it, part of under the knee is just the family and the acceptance and the love that the man chooses. So there's my two bits. Thank you very much.
My name is Janine, and I've worked with Andris for the past 15 years, 18 years. 15 years with Heidi. So it was always Andris and Heidi and Janine. It kind of feels like the end of an era and the beginning of another one. But I just want to share a couple of memories, and one of them I want to do it in imitation as well. Andris did not just love dinosaurs. He also imitated them. but I didn't know it at the time. When I was first working at Prairie Fire, people would say to me, that Andris, he's such a serious guy. And I said, serious? Because we were used to him. He loved to wear paper bags on his head. He did all kinds of things. But one of the things, so I will demonstrate the dinosaur imitation. So you need to just pretend these flowers. There's me working at my desk. And Andris would come over and he'd go like that. First I looked and I said, what are you doing? Why are you acting like a rodent? This is a T-Rex. So I got to just be able to distinguish between, the different dinosaurs that he could imitate. And, I felt happy that Andris and Heidi and I, and later Andris and Lindsay and I, were comfortable to be our real selves with each other. And one of the little stories I just want to share, there's many, many, many stories, but there's just one, and Kate might know this story, but one day Andris knew my overwhelming love of primates. And one day he came into, do you know about this? One day he came into the office with a stack of National Geographics that he had gone through. He had gone through them, I don't know if they were in your basement, or wherever they were. But he came in with a stack this big of every National Geographic magazine that carried an article on primates from before I was born. Okay, and that's getting a while ago now, right? So before I was born. And I can tell Andris now that I never read them. There's a but. I never read them, but I'll never forget the pile. And I'll never forget Andris, our friend, our colleague, and someone who I spent more time with than almost anyone on the